My name is Kevin Gallagher. I also run the Barrett Brown Legal Defense Fund, and Barrett Brown's the person who originally created this thing called Project PM. Uh, when he had this idea called Project PM, originally in like 2009, what he was seeing was the failure of the media, and he was looking for ways to improve it. And he was really upset with like mainstream pundits like Thomas Friedman and Charles Krauthammer, who don't know what they're talking about most of the time. But and also Barrett, as a skeptic, is interested in a scientific form of journalism. And so at the beginning, it was all very theoretical, but, on the occasion of the Arab Spring and the activity with Anonymous being involved in Optinesia, and the hack of H.B. Gary, it kind of completely evolved into this whole new thing, where he created this wiki site, and he's soliciting volunteers to go through, open source intelligence, things that are available in the public domain, and also, emails that have been hacked by Anonymous out of security firms. Try to figure out what they're up to and see what is in there that may be of journalistic import. With that, so everyone knows how a wiki works. It's just media wiki software that anybody can post and edit to and collaborate on. And so the express purpose of Project PM here is to provide a centralized, actionable data set regarding the intelligence contracting industry, the PR industry's interface with totalitarian regimes, the mushrooming InfoSec/cybersecurity industry, and other issues constituting threats to human rights, civic transparency, individual privacy, and the health of democratic institutions. I think that's the angle that with which all of us are approaching the subject today. But this all might seem very innocuous and innocent and very First Amendment protected, like research activity that anyone might do. But so actually, the FBI served a search warrant on him in March 2012, and right down there on number 8, they listed the actual URL of the wiki, which they were seeking records for. Yeah, somehow they're interested in this wiki that's exposing the surveillance complex and the private contractors who work in collusion with the government. And a year after that, you have a subpoena that's served to Cloudflare to get all the information behind the domain that's hosting this wiki. So clearly it's viewed as some kind of threat to the government, the fact that journalists and researchers and volunteers who were involved in this were putting together this information in one place. Well, before I introduce this slide, I like to introduce it by saying this is the face of evil, but I don't mean any offense to any people who may work for any of these companies. But this is what we're talking about, is this massive
Excuse me, Kevin, I'm sorry.
What's
but
that?
as long as you're going to be talking about the slides, could someone see if we can get the projector working so the people in the crowd can see the slides?
Oh, are we going with no slides at all?
Unless they can fix the projector really quickly, which I believe they can, correct?
Hack it.
Yeah, I was completely talking based on my slides.
Let's get that fixed really quickly. We can talk fast.
Please.
Or if everyone can come up and just gather around us. We could.
Here comes the. There's a cavalry out there, and they're coming to fix the projector.
This is rather essential to our talk.
Is there a good hashtag we can use to get
Help tech support.
Yeah.
That might make it more interesting. We can interrogate them.
Is there anyone with AV or support in the room?
Cool.
I think we can.
Do we need it?
I apologize for the technical inconvenience. We'll see. We'll see.
Is there
if
a
someone's
volunteer, a Hope volunteer in the audience? Just yell out yes. Okay, can you go find whomever? Find the person with the most power to make this happen as quickly as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we got something?
We could solve it ourselves, self-governance.
Do we need this?
you put the slides online on the wiki or something?
Can you put the PDF online?
You can text
Well,
Bluetooth it or
I had
something?
I had been told that this was tested and working.
I think it's that. That's the projector, right? Yeah.
You have an HDMI cable that reaches.
Help is coming. The cavalry. Can you hear them? I can hear them.
What a disaster. All right, we're going to start over.
Well, it actually
We're
fits into
starting
the
over, yeah.
crowdsourcing paradigm that things can get kind of messy when you have a bunch of citizen journalists rocking the town, rocking the intelligence agencies and everything. Sometimes it's not as pretty clean as, the more swank outfits.
You got this? All right. Well, can we just somebody just talk about shit, rather than us just waiting?
Yeah. See? It's detecting it.
Yeah. No.
This looks like progress.
Plug it in now.
Right.
This would be so disappointing if it was actually a good slideshow.
Which it is.
Maybe your part,
So I think in the meantime, perhaps Joe, do you have any
Yeah.
stuff?
Well, while we finish this up, one of the big things that Barrett found during Arab Spring was that a lot of these tech firms were helping out dictators in the Middle East monitor all of their citizens under total surveillance.
And you were watching this from your front row seat, right?
Well, this was I'm just sitting at home and just knowing what these firms are up to, and seeing that they could just scrape up every GPS coordinate of everybody in the Middle East who has a Facebook profile, and where they could just go target, arrest, beat, torture. They did this in Egypt. They did this in Syria. They're doing this right now in Gaza as we speak. And this is what we figured out. And it's been a trip, and it's harrowing. It's really to see this happening, to see people like Zuckerberg and other people and tech giants who just really don't give a fuck about people's privacy and safety.
Keep going, Joe.
Just it's really harrowing, I think, and it's we see so much of what's happened in the Middle East. I feel like could have been prevented if we weren't selling stuff to these regimes. We weren't just giving them 0 days backdoors and just handing people's entire lives on a silver platter.
And you saw that with IRC channels, right? In IRC? Or?
This is just generally on Twitter and just at Facebook, and literally just compiling research from every single corner of the web and just noticing these little things.
And then connecting the information to the right people, so the crowdsourcing happens and funnels it up to people who get it to a wider audience.
The best way to do it, we were just blasting stuff out on Twitter, and everybody else was seeing it happen at the same time. Everybody was coming to a consensus. Our little bubble of hacker people, and we try to tell this to people that aren't really as technologically savvy, and they're just like, huh,
Yeah. All right. To start off from where I lost video, Barrett's really unique innovation was to recognize the power of the internet for collaboration and the fact that there were thousands upon thousands of these emails and no one knows what's in them. So yeah, let's solicit people to go through them. Yeah, this is a picture of the wiki. I told you what its stated purpose was. And this is the search warrant that was served by the FBI against his residence in his mom's house. Explicitly names the URL of that wiki. A year later, they also served the subpoena to Cloudflare, trying to figure out who was running the domain. If they had followed that up with multiple subpoenas, they could have figured out more potentially, who was actually editing and contributing to it. And this is the axis of evil, I suppose. We're here to talk about firms like Palantir, HB Gary, Stratfor, Booz Allen Hamilton, Raytheon, Mantech, Gamma, Endgame Systems, Cubic. This is the privatized side of the surveillance apparatus that does not get as much discussion as like the NSA does, but yet it constitutes over 70% of the U.S. intelligence budget. It's going. So at least 70%. Yeah, of the U.S. intelligence budget is going to contractors. There's very little accountability for it all.
You can't send them Freedom of Information Act requests, for example.
Yeah, like the NSA, all those crazy acronym government agencies. They're doing a lot of like crazy stuff. We all know that, but they're not necessarily doing all of it. They're going to the private sector. And random dudes in Northern Virginia are going to work and going to these companies and doing jobs like as like a proxy for Uncle Sam, and there's not the same kind of oversight. So
They don't have PR spokespeople that you can call, at least not that'll definitely answer the phone and give you something at least.
Do not sound like idiots.
Yeah.
And these guys have a profit motive too,
Right.
more over than anything. So when the whole industry is just mushrooming, it's like, how much stuff can you guys possibly vacuum up and then put into your little tables and convert, and what are you guys getting out of all of this? What are you doing with all of our taxpayer money?
I'm not a fan of the U.S. government, but the fact is that intelligence community research was meant to benefit the public good, and now it's being run by the profit motive. So how does the profit motive and the public good mix? It doesn't.
Yeah, so here are some examples of stories that, captivated Project PM's attention. This first one is an exclusive report that was filed by Project PM and Barrett Brown. Within the HB Gary emails, he had discovered a program called Romas Coin, and it was due to be replaced with a program called Odyssey. It basically entailed mass surveillance against the Arab world, leveraging like sophisticated mobile phone software and a lot of things we don't understand, like linguistics and semantics and stuff like that. They were looking for people that are experts in these things. And obviously, some of you may be familiar with the Team Themis scandal, another thing that came out of this where people were hired to go after opponents of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and in particular, WikiLeaks and Glenn Greenwald. A whole consortium of these firms, basically Palantir, Barrico, HB Gary, were among them. They were formulating this plan to, you see it here, feed disinformation, create messages to sabotage or discredit the opposing organization, submit fake documents, and then call out the error. This was all being discussed. And if this is...
Those were tactics to WikiLeaks.
Right, these are tactics that they were considering to deploy against WikiLeaks.
None of that's defensive either. That's all offensive tactics. Like, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between the offensive
Yeah.
and the defensive here is are they trying to block these off of all computer networks? Are they trying to figure out who's reading all of these cables, who's gaining this knowledge, who in the government shouldn't be reading it? There's so many programs going on. Our government and our congressmen can't even possibly keep track of any of them, let alone if they, actually gave a shit.
Can everybody
Yeah.
hear in the back? Okay, speak closer to the microphones, everyone.
So here's another one. Back in 2012, this DoD information operations contractor called Leone Industries was basically caught in a smear campaign against a group of journalists at USA Today who had written critically of that same firm, and they had to apologize. But yeah, this is the type of stuff that goes on. And I think activists and journalists are, of course, the prime targets for these firms.
Project PM research fed into these articles.
That's absolutely correct, yeah. This is another thing. U.S. government software creates fake people to spread messages via social networking. This is a thing called persona management that entails the ability for one intelligence analyst to control multiple fake sock puppets that are basically indistinguishable from regular people, or at least the average person wouldn't be able to tell because it's replete with like background and history and fake friends, and they're using these things to spread disinformation, to gather information on a target, to discredit people and do things like that. Similarly, there's a lot of monitoring of social media going on by the private sector. Raytheon's Riot program is one example. This was reported by Ryan Gallagher in The Guardian. There's a company called Bright Planet. They advertise this this program called Blue Jay. It bills itself as a law enforcement Twitter
Star Wars.
Did you just get blasted?
Just keep going.
Yeah, all these things are marketed to law enforcement, and so this is a law enforcement Twitter crime scanner, and they're going to be scanning Twitter and, you know, collecting massive data sets to try to predict suspicious behavior and when a crime might happen.
And these slides you're seeing are Project PM research that fed up to wider audiences with the mainstream media.
Another example is Intrepid has a thing called Tartan. It boasts the ability to identify ranks of influence within human networks and uncover hidden or missing relationships. What that basically means is it can de-anonymize people. You point this software at a group of people, applications listed, national security, federal law enforcement, and so on. In their brochures for this, they explicitly mentioned Occupy Wall Street as a target. And as Joe mentioned, and another one of the huge issues with this is that the firms in the West have no qualms about selling these things to authoritarian or regimes or dictatorships in third world countries. And that's what happened is this firm, Amisys, sold spyware that was used by Gaddafi, spyware which allowed them to, you know, probably detain, kill people.
More than just spyware and hacking, just a fully diversified machine of public relations to just say the same bullshit line over and over again. We found this with the firm called Corvus in Bahrain, while they have a very large PR contract to basically just write articles for like PR Newswire to say, hey guys, like the regime, the royalty is making baby steps to reform all the time. And they've had this uprising going on for the past 4 years, and we don't even pay attention to it. Our government really just is kind of shoot it off because we have military base there. The Fifth Fleet is based out of there. And only recently, I think the other day, when our one of our top diplomats went over there and they got kicked out of the country for meeting with opposition leaders. So it's like, at what point are you guys going to keep continuing this madness? You know?
So I just have a few more slides, and I'm going to turn it over to the rest of our panel. I'm going to introduce each of these people. Finn Fisher, Gamma International. This program was discovered being used against Egyptian activists and journalists. It's a it's a RAT, which is a remote access program that allows total control over the target's computer. This is just a screenshot of Palantir's software that they can map out networks and basically identify foci of influence. And another issue that is significant for Project PM is the subject of zero-day exploits, and no one's really figured out what the solution is as far as like regulating this. I mean, I know there is a campaign to a coalition against the unlawful surveillance exports, because most of the surveillance tech is developed in the West, and then it's used for repression and oppression in other countries. So with that, I think, is it Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I'll start off. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Be sure to talk into the mic, like really close to it. Volume's low.
Testing. All right. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit towards the end of Jeremy Hammond's trial. Or not even trial, just discovery phase. Hey, let's keep him in a hole for like 18 months while we try to the government's trying to avoid having to tell everybody that there was an original hacker of Stratfor that zero-dayed his way into their entire database email server and gave this exploit to Cebu. We had this, the government had to admit this in a filing that this actually happened, and then he, in turn, gave the exploit to Jeremy. So they were working in tandem, essentially, without...
Cebu was an FBI informant hacker.
For anybody that doesn't, who's been living under a rock here with lulsec, so without the FBI informant's help, there's no, they probably wouldn't even have been hacked in the first place. Interestingly enough, Stratford is involved with Mantech with they had a contract for irregular warfare services and to conceptualize for the military how they would do these operations abroad. And they were just, they haven't really said what they were doing with it, but irregular warfare is basically your non-kinetic firing weapons at each other. It's maybe more like subversion, maybe like, I don't know, sending hookers to a politician you want to take down or something like that. It could encompass a lot of things, and it's been around since as long as humans have been beating the shit out of each other.
What about the
anyway,
acquisition of HB Gary by Mantech?
That was also very curious too. Mantech acquires HB Gary, and they're able to go and say like, hey, we're not responsible. We're buying your company, but we're not buying your responsibilities for all the stuff that you might have been on the hook for. Going even further back, Cebu was involved in hacking Mantech and looting and pillaging. I think that was what Fuck FBI Friday 1 or 2 was one of those. So FBI is involved. Basically, we caught them hacking themselves. I had to like suspend disbelief. I thought like I had been seeing this for like months and years on end, and then finally it's like seemed like a pretty legit hypothesis. You know, I didn't want to. I felt like I was a conspiracy theorist, and finally it's like, well,
It's been confirmed. Yeah.
so then I have to ask myself, why did they allow this to happen? Was this incompetence, or did they really want to take Stratford down a peg? Reading a lot of the Stratford emails, I maybe think the latter. There's a lot of
The most plausible.
There's a lot of stuff that Stratford's doing and have their hands in that I would probably say that that's likely as well. They had a hedge fund. They were starting a hedge fund called StratCap that was events futures trading. So it was like another version of InTrade. So they would basically have this computer that would trade on algorithms, and while they're doing this other irregular warfare thing, there's just all of these other things that Stratford is doing that would combine into like their one mission. So
They were setting up StratCap with a Goldman Sachs guy, so it's no small fry.
right. So
So next we're going to have Andrew Blake. He's a reporter with RT. He's covered many of these things. I have your slides here.
Hello. Thanks. Hi. My role here, I was kind of in a really particular place when Project PM was doing a lot of really important stuff. And to go back, one thing in particular that we found out is this thing called Trapwire. But to back up a little bit, like if you're not following, or if you weren't following the whole thing that actually happened with these Stratford emails, was Stratford is another one of these, is the geopolitical consulting, jerks. Yeah, private CIA. And so they were hacked by, as Joe was saying, by the FBI actually. But anyway, so
It's true.
basically,
An FBI informant steering Jeremy Hammond, who had the technical expertise.
and this isn't like setting up a fake bomb for somebody to go be raided later. This is like hacking's real.
Yeah, so if you go back 2.5 years ago to late 2012, Stratford was hacked by the FBI and anonymous,
Hammond
and a couple thousands of emails were pilfered.
5 million.
5 million, okay, thank you. And eventually, those actually got published by WikiLeaks, and you can go on WikiLeaks and you can read these millions of emails sent from people within Stratford, the vice presidents, and they're all like old CIA cronies, and some of them still affiliated, obviously, kind of that culture, like
exists there. So you start going through these emails and you start just catching keywords. WikiLeaks actually, after a while, built a great search function, and you can go to I think gifiles.wikileaks.org and type in whatever.
Type in raghead.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody wants to go.
The vice
see.
president of intelligence at Stratford, Fred Burton, is notorious for racial slurs.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found one day was this thing called Trapwire, and it was reported for a little while in the press a few months after Stratford was hacked. So a few months later, we start seeing that these guys from Stratford were sending emails to each other, pretty much saying like, okay, there's this thing called Trapwire, and Stratford is trying to sell it to people, but we were seeing all these inner office emails. And it turns out that it's a surveillance system that's being sold, or at least touted around. It was sold to a bunch of different agencies, but we started seeing that this surveillance system was being sold and given to like Washington, D.C. New York PD was alleged to be using it, Texas Department of Public Safety, and like dozens all over the world. And what the company was saying this thing was, all right, we use existing like Panda tilt cameras, like the infrastructure is already there. We're just going to combine, normal CCTV with facial recognition technology, and we're going to combine that with
To identify supposedly suspicious behavior.
yeah,
Predict terror attacks.
Predict.
yeah. So just creepy Orwellian surveillance stuff. This was before the Snowden revelation and stuff like that. But so you can see here that this is what it looks like if you go onto WikiLeaks, and you can go through the emails, and you can see guys from Stratford telling one another like, oh, let's try to sell this. This is awesome. We already got it here. We got it here. And this is a system that's going to make people like, you can watch them, and it's super creepy, whatever. A lot of it is probably hyperbole. Like we know it's installed in places, but it's creepy, but like, yeah, come on, it's probably not that creepy, but it might be. You never know.
They like to upsell. Stratford likes to upsell some of their stuff.
But so my role here is, at the time I'm hanging out, I'm writing stories, and I'm researching a bunch of stuff, and I start going through these emails, and the more I see about, more from the Stratford emails I see about Trapwire, the more there's just lots and lots and lots of pieces, and that's kind of where I ended up at Project PM, because I could go online and I can hop in an IRC channel, or I can send out a tweet, or I can send the internet's a really cool place. You do a lot of talking with a lot of people about a lot of things.
Those are all basic crowdsourcing tools.
Yeah, and what Project PM was doing was just like open source investigating these things, going onto Google and just typing in the right words in the right places. You can find just like really, really frightening stuff. Yeah, so like the more we started researching Trapwire, the more we put these pieces of the puzzle together, where not only was Stratford trying to sell these the service, but it was really, really creepy. And this is to play off the whole tinfoil hat thing. When WikiLeaks first published the Trapwire email specifically, because they were just publishing in like handfuls of times, they were DDoSed for like 2 days. Probably just a coincidence, whatever. But it was a big story. Like this was happening. They were publishing information, evidence.
Also hiding this stuff for the companies, hiding who owns what.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
Subsidiaries of what.
as attention focuses not just on Stratford but on Trapwire, people start going like, okay, well, who's running Trapwire? And we start going through like the chain of command of people that are involved with this, and you realize that the company that's running Trapwire is also running this company Abraxas, this company Intrepid, and they were doing pretty much everything else in like the creepy surveillance world. Like they were actually like.
If you're familiar. If you're familiar with like Aleister Crowley, you'll recognize the name Abraxas. They have all these weird mystical names,
Yeah.
creepy stuff. Total Analysis Corporation, Asymmetric Solutions. It sounds like stuff out of Philip K. Dick novels.
Yeah.
They would deny that they lied that they
Yeah.
Barrett would call them up, be like, wait.
Barrett would call them up.
Fine.
They would lie.
Yeah, people
don't know that. We don't
people
know.
were actually going like to outside these buildings headquarters and taking pictures because they want to know more about these things. They want, like, there's companies that are doing really creepy things and we don't know about it. Let's figure it out. You know, sure, we can go on Google, you go try to find some the PDFs of whatever you can. You know, it's really awesome if someone wants to go and hack something and publish 5 million emails with like a bunch of crazy evidence. I'm not advocating that because I think that could get me droned. But you want to, like, you know, you can do that, yeah. But so on top of this whole, like, yeah, it's creepy, it's probably overblown, whatever. This was a couple years ago, and when it came out, there were like it was picked up in the Times. It was pretty much every major newspaper, like in the West, had a story about trapwire, like for what's that?
Not the Atlantic.
Not the Atlantic.
Because the Center for National.
Yeah.
Center for New American.
Center for,
The last time I read
do you want
Yes,
them? Do you want the mic?
No,
Or-
yeah,
oh,
I'm trying to remember the Center for New American Security guy.
Yeah,
the
just keep going,
board.
keep
Okay.
going.
Sorry.
Okay,
Keep going.
yeah, we're on timing, yeah. So anyways, super creepy, right? The point here, though, is like this stuff does exist, and even if it's hyperbole, even if it is really, really overblown, just recently, Chicago, I believe around a year ago, started using facial recognition technology, the CPD, the Chicago Police Department. Last year, they actually caught someone using that facial recognition technology, and someone was just sentenced to 22 years in prison. I'm pretty sure he like killed a guy or like robbed a store. You know, it's something you should be in prison probably, either, you know, if you think that prisons should exist. But regardless, you know, this stuff does exist, and we just saw just last week, I believe, a police agency in the UK is now using facial recognition technology. They're using something called NeoFace, which I believe comes out of Hong Kong and is all over the East, and is all sorts of creepy stuff. So governments, agencies all over the world are using really, really creepy tools, and you can't easily get information about it. So that's where Project PM came in. That's when I started going and hanging out in chat rooms and being like, oh, has anyone seen this document? Oh, cool. Well, that brought me to this document. And then someone else will say, oh, well, it got me that document. And then someone else will say, oh, hey, why doesn't someone go and hack something else and get all those emails? And, you know, don't necessarily do anything illegal, but when you start talking to one another and you can use the internet as this collaborative tool, you know, it's more than just like, well, you realize this, you're all a bunch of nerds, but like, you know, you can find some pretty interesting stuff that should be disclosed. People are spying on you, and there's no oversight there, you know, very little oversight. And if you can find a way to elaborate on this information and bring it to the public's eye, it gets picked up. People are going to write about it. It is going to end up on the New York Times front page if it's important enough. So if you are in that infrastructure, if you're in those companies or you know someone who is, totally just leak all of that. Because
Follow the Twitter handle PROJPM for Project PM and send what you find there.
Exactly.
We'll organize it and help the crowdsource crowd get into it more.
So I mean, what we kind of want to do now is kind of show a demonstration of like how this was all organized, how Project PM worked, how Barrett conducted his journalism and solicited volunteers to go through documents and find stuff. So we have Douglas Lucas. He's a Texas-based freelance writer, researcher, and journalist, mostly known for covering Barrett Brown's case. He has been to many of the hearings and for turning the Austin headquartered private spy firm Stratfor's emails published by WikiLeaks into national security stories at Who, What, Why, with a focus on U.S. secret involvement in and counterinsurgency approach to the Mexican drug war.
Right, so I thought that since a lot of this Project PM stuff was historical, it would be nice for us to unveil some documents that have barely been noticed before. Slide one. Yeah, those documents. Okay, so the documents connect with both Barrett and Stratfor, and I'll tell you how and why Project PM can and should crowdsource research into them. Last week, Who at Why published my piece on frequent Mexican military aircraft and helicopter incursions into U.S. airspace. As part of our investigative partnership, WikiLeaks has added to the top of its list of Stratfor releases my Who What Why article, which was based on these intelligence products that you see right there on the screen. There are 2011 border control reports from Texas. We'll shortly show you one of them. Stratfor obtained at least 34 of them in that year. I organized them there on that page on the projector you see. So Stratfor obtained at least 34 of them, which meant they ultimately ended up at WikiLeaks. but nobody really noticed them because not many people dig into the Stratfor files. I do. So let me tell you about the documents. Slide one. The Austin headquartered Border Security Operations Center created them. This here is a picture coming up of the Austin Center, the inside of it. As of about 2011, we're getting back to the picture, don't worry. They oversaw nearly 3,000 intelligence analysts and hundreds of live surveillance cameras around the clock. Cameras pointed at the Texas-Mexico border, which is the largest section of the U.S.-Mexico border. So obviously all this has national security implications. Just think of Obama's recent request for 3-point-whatever billion in emergency border funds. My next slide. This is Aaron Grigsby, then head of the Border Security Operations Center, who is one of Stratfor's sources. He's a Texas cop, specifically a Texas Ranger, which is the state police division overseeing the Austin Border Security Operations Center. I surprise interviewed him and got him to acknowledge he emailed with Stratfor VP of Intelligence, Fred Burton, the guy who says raghead all the time in the emails. Okay, so what was once Aaron Grigsby's center has 6 outlying offices called Joint Operations and Intelligence Centers. Despite being law enforcement entities, that's the name, straight out of the Pentagon glossary, militarization of police. Okay, so I found the El Paso outlying office, the El Paso Joint Operations and Intelligence Center, and surprise interviewed the border liaison officer there, who did some of the forwarding of the intelligence products to Stratfor. And I surprise interviewed the Stratfor analyst who was receiving some of those El Paso office emails. I got her to acknowledge she had access to the Austin Center's intelligence products in 2011, which is when she was at Stratfor. And about the time I reminded her on the phone that the intelligent products are law enforcement sensitive and thus meant only for cop eyes only, she muttered at me, "Fuck you, motherfucker." I'll report more on that quid pro quo relationship between the El Paso office and Stratfor in a Who What Why piece to come soon that I hope Project PM can contribute to by doing additional research into these intelligence documents. So because Project PM studies the quid pro quo relationships and revolving doors between government security entities and private security intelligence contractors, really control is a better word than security because as Thomas Drake said yesterday, all this surveillance is ultimately about population control, taking away our individual sovereignty. And these documents have personal data about us, and it gets sprayed out of places like that El Paso office's Texas DPS email address to private spies like Stratfor, possibly in violation of the law, and thankfully WikiLeaks gets a hold of them. Okay, so let me tell you now a little bit about the documents. That first one, page 1. Yeah, okay. So these are called Border Operations Sector Assessments, or BOSAs for short. Stratfor obtained at least 34 of them. Where am I? You'll know the first page of it, you can see the Texas flag there because it's created under the auspices of the Texas State Police, namely the Rangers, that Aaron Grigsby guy, but it's actually military contractors who were creating these. It was Abrams, Learning and Information Systems. Fuck you, motherfucker. That's what I refer to her as short. In 2010, she was creating these. She told me so. I'm kind of tricky when I interview people. And then she later moved to Stratfor a year later and started receiving a bunch of them from the El Paso office. So you'll note the document on page 1 is marked controlled unclassified information. It's elsewhere marked as law enforcement sensitive. Now page 78. Right. So this is the slide for Anonymous versus Los Zetas. The caption says, quote, mask worn by anonymous members and supporters, known as the Guy Fawkes mask, unquote. Ain't that cute? Slide's first 2 sentences, quote, it appears that the online hacker collective Anonymous has decided to take on Mexico's most violent drug cartel, Los Zetas. Speculation about the scope of the conflict abounds, fueled by several conflicting reports about the hacktivist group's intentions, unquote. Then the slide details the conflicting reports. You can see why this stuff leads to the Department of Justice saying in Barrett Brown's case that Anonymous is trying to overthrow the government because you have these understaffed, under-resourced, complete idiot intelligence analysts doing stuff like this, and it gets funneled up to the higher level people, ultimately like DOJ. Haven't proved that entirely, but that's the basic gist of how it works. Okay, so indeed, Texas Border Control Intelligence was monitoring Op Cartel, which was primarily a creation of Anons in Mexico. Barrett was involved in that operation. As Op Cartel was underway, ex-military contractors associated with Tom Ryan posted Barrett's street address online. They stated the address was, quote, for the Zetas so they can have the right Barrett Brown address, unquote. The Zetas were initially Mexican special forces who had been trained with U.S. funds. Brown fled here to New York City and was mocked by the mainstream media for all of it. But note that today, also largely ignored by the U.S. mainstream media, autodefensas, self-defense groups, have sprung up in Mexico for good or ill to fight back against the narcos. So those are sort of decentralized groups, just as crowdsourcing research is decentralized. Whatever the drawbacks of Op Cartel and the autodefensas, Barrett was ahead of his time as usual. People mocked him. When he was first raided in 2012, the FBI lead agent on his case, none other than the aptly named Agent Smith, did not publicize the warrant and affidavit claiming the Bureau wanted to protect Brown from the Zetas. So the secrecy made that first raid on Barrett harder to prove. People didn't believe Barrett. So these documents will be for great justice when we research them. Now I'll show you what some of the BOSAs typically contain. Page 2, please. Okay. See here a key event and finding, quote, the largest single marijuana seizure occurred in the Rio Grande Valley sector where U.S. Border Patrol agents seized 132 bundles of marijuana totaling 3,262.05 pounds concealed within a load of produce from a 1999 Kentworth truck, unquote. So the Rio Grande Valley is where one of those Joint Operations and Intelligence Center outlying offices is. Now page 47, it says, has the details. So let's look at page 47 because this is how you would crowdsource research into it if you want to help Project PM, which everybody can do. So here we see that the weed, not weave, but weed, the pot, was, quote, commingled in a load of produce, unquote, and, importantly, that the incident happened at the Falfurrias Border Patrol checkpoint. We know the document is reporting between October 26 and November 2. So now we can send a Freedom of Information Act request to Customs and Border Protection for this very incident. Hell, for all incidents and all 34 of the intelligent products, ultimately we can all organize them and put them on a Project PM. They're not going to like that, but we will. Then, last thing, Stratfor also obtained daily and weekly products from the 6 outlying offices. So once we organize those, we can drill down to an even more granular level of the history of 2011 National Security Border Control from the point of view of the spies. These other data in the BOSAs, they have statistics on kidnapping of migrants, quote unquote, apprehension of legal immigrants, data on cartel movements, data on the hunt for mythical terrorists supposedly crossing the border, and much more, including tons of pictures. Grinning Texas cops in cowboy hats photographed next to trucks with drugs they seized. Finally, let me show you the last thing that we've organized so far at the Project PM website. One sec. You'll note that the title of it is 2011 Texas Border Security Intelligence Products. So far, we've only organized the Border Operations Sector Assessments, the BOSAs. You know, the one that we found a smoking gun between the Border Liaison Officer Lloyd Shook at the El Paso office, sending one of these BOSAs to Victoria J. Allen, AKA fuck you, motherfucker. Yeah, 2011 Texas Border Security Intelligence Products, the one we've organized so far, the 34 BOSAs, and we're going to continue organizing the daily and weekly reports, and we'll have a whole map, a whole history of 2011 border control in Texas, and we can do that with photographs, we can make maps, we can make visualizations. And you'll note here the intelligence products, we got the dates, so it's set up like a calendar. We've got the dates that the reports cover, the direct links to the intelligence products at WikiLeaks Press, thanks for that, WikiLeaks Press, or the bin links at WikiLeaks, and the link to the Stratfor email at the WikiLeaks website where the product was attached. So finally, now you have the organization that you need to begin researching these products on your own, all of us together. There's something, 80 pages times 34 documents. There's going to be enough to go around for everybody until the end of time. Read them, Google what you find, send FOIA requests, surprise interview people, they'll say fun things. We can do, and then just tweet your findings to me at Douglas Lucas or to Project PM at PROJPM. That way we can better understand the public-private intelligence complex, which is ruining so much, including Barrett Brown.
And I do recommend Douglas's latest article because it talks about Mexican military incursions over the border that are apparently, according to Stratfor, happening regularly.
Yeah, last month's Arizona incursion, where a Mexican police helicopter flew into Arizona airspace and shot near U.S. Border Patrol agents, is no fluke. These intelligence products, these BOSAs, show examples of Mexican military helicopters doing this sort of stuff frequently. And that's just one thing. Helicopters, okay, so let's find, what are we going to find next? Let's find Zeta cartel members crossing the bridges. They do that.
But what was the comment of the head Stratfor exec when asked about this?
Oh, yeah. That was Fred Burton, again, the guy who says raghead all the time. He was, yeah, he does. He's a one-of-a-kind character. You couldn't invent him for a novel unless you were Philip K. Dick. So what he said about these helicopter incursions is that they happen all the time. And don't tell Alex Jones or Glenn Beck, because people will freak out once they realize what I found, which is that Mexican military aircraft are crossing the border all the time. I actually combined my Stratfor research with the Freedom of Information Act request that showed Mexican military aircraft entered something like 94 times between 2010 and 2012, entered U.S. airspace, and you can find all of that on whowhatwhy.com or at the wikileaks.org/GI files list of releases. It's at the very top due to our investigative partnership.
Excellent. And so our last speaker we're going to hear from, and I'm not sure if there will be time for questions, is Lauren Pespiza. She works with Transparency Toolkit, and she's kind of working on tools that can improve crowdsourcing, improve the analysis of large data sets and the visualization of these things and so on. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in Project PM during like 2011. Oh, okay. So I was in Project PM around all this time, all this stuff was happening, and I was seeing how it was, in a way, somewhat tedious to go through all these emails and documents, and we were all doing it sort of by hand. And yeah, you had search on WikiLeaks, you search for keywords and stuff, but there really wasn't too much, analytics software that we could use to put all this stuff together real fast. So it made it sort of a sort of small group of really interested people that were passionate about it to begin with. Like making fun of NSA contractors and embarrassing them is just something that is one of my favorite pastimes. So, and especially with a lot of other people in Project PM felt that way too. And it was. So you got more? Okay. It was fun.
Transfer toolkit up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't want to go too far into it because we need to have like an actual release and stuff. But this is sort of what we've been working on. What I've been working on with my founder Shadash for the past 6 months or so, and he's been working on it longer. And it's a data analytics platform that connects to a lot of different data sets like OpenGov stuff, Sunlight Foundation, WikiLeaks, and will enable people to sort of visualize stuff better. There's timeline tools and table generation. You can chain tools together to make even more interesting comparisons to network graph, actually. Yeah, more. It's just more effective. It's what this is what most startups do now is analytic stuff. It's pretty. If we had this when Project PM was going on, we would have been releasing 3 times the amount of discoveries, and it would have been a lot more. Maybe Vera would have gotten a lot more credit, because I know that when before Snowden's leaks came out or revelations came out, Barrett was sort of still sort of treated like a conspiracy theorist, all those weird people at Project PM finding this stuff. This was stuff published by major media organizations, but people still didn't really take Barrett seriously. And then we were really vindicated when Edward Snowden came forward with all the revelations about the surveillance technology. Oh yeah, we told you. We've known this for a long time, guys. But,
Absolutely right. And
yeah.
So what is this, Lauren?
Oh yeah, that's our network graph of the NSA contractors on LinkedIn. We scraped LinkedIn searching for all the acronyms and of secret programs that like PRISM and stuff like that, and found that most of them, a lot of these contractors post their secret programs they're working on to their public LinkedIn profile. So we can easily generate a network graph to show the connections and how big these programs are and how many people work on them. And it's kind of embarrassing to them, which is always fun.
I did see once, actually a couple of cops on LinkedIn decide to put like, I'm an expert in network exploitation, which of course like just like it's shown to everybody on the internet, and then later he's hacked and like run out of the entire state, and he has no idea why. You know, and it's like, well, if you put on your LinkedIn that you're a cop and you're exploiting people's computers, it's gonna like the whole world is gonna come at you.
Oh, like Aaron Barr?
Yeah. No, it's a different guy. I forget his name, but this was a case I saw. But
So I think
anyway.
we've illustrated quite aptly why this Project PM thing in the wiki was viewed as a threat to the FBI and the powers that be. I think we have time for just one question. And, you know, there's a microphone just right over there, I believe.
Two questions if you run really fast up there.
I just want to ask if there's some place that all of this is going to be easily comprehended and published anytime soon. Do you have any plan to do that?
Well, so there is the Project PM Wiki, which you can still visit. However, some of its information is outdated because the founder has been in jail and it hasn't been so active. But I've written a few articles where you can catch up on what all this work was. And my name is Kevin Gallagher. You'll just look. I have a couple on Huffington Post. There's one on Daily Dot that just covers the issues that Project PM was into, and particularly the private intelligence contractors.
You can also help.
Yeah.
You know, you can also help us, Corey.
We're
You can also help yourself.
Anybody
Anyone can help.
join it.
This is the whole point.
It
of,
doesn't have to be all pretty and nice. You can like directly do this yourself too. You can jump in and join Project PM. It's more, it spreads the legal liability around. Then you can check out my Who What Why latest report this week. It's my pinned tweet, and you can check out the forthcoming one I'm going to have. And I'll get that fuck you motherfucker transcript out one way or another.
Oh, man.
Hey guys, I posted this question to Snowden before on Twitter, but apparently
Did
there was
he
no-
answer you?
No, I mean there was no answering from, no questioning him at all. But I want to ask this to you, Andrew, actually, particularly. How do you guys as well feel about your activist work against one civilian state and against one repressive call it state is used to whitewash the reputation of another actively military aggressive state? I'm talking about your work with RT. I'm talking about Snowden's work with on other Russian media, and yeah, just want to hear your opinion about it.
I just think that everything that's happening, I don't like secrets, and if you're doing anything to anyone, anywhere, in any part of the world, other people should know. Everyone, everywhere, especially the bad things, you know, like it's.
The problem is that, for example, on RT, being one of the main voices of Russia to the rest of the world right now, your credible and substantial, interesting work is put next to the blatant lies and blatant Russian propaganda.
He's the most credible person at the network.
It's all just different jurisdictions. There's a Russia jurisdiction, there's an Al Jazeera English jurisdiction. You can publish stuff wherever. I'm a freelancer. Work with whatever jurisdiction is going to get your info out.
I say, guys, your work is used to whitewash the reputation of Russia's aggression.
Okay.
How do you feel about it?
That's
All right,
not
can we go to the next question?
You can talk to me about that when I'm not on
Yeah.
stage. being
Everybody in the
live-streamed on internet
world,
forever.
everybody in the world can read websites from any jurisdiction. So it's a global audience.
Barrett was a big proponent of going after, in particular, what Russia's been doing. The
Absolutely.
fact that he's in jail right now and not here on this stage, like just trashing Vladimir Putin, is an absolute travesty. And we'd like him back, like now. Him and Jeremy too, and Wormer and Kahuna
PayPal 14,
and
all the other political
and
prisoners.
PayPal 14.
Are political prisoners.
You know, if you guys, if we
Chelsea Manning.
want to fight this menace, but when our government is locking up our own hackers and our own best and brightest people, it's just like it's a heresy. So I do like our research doesn't. I would like to think it does not help whitewash Russia's abuses. 'Cause
Next question, yeah.
we know what they know.
We're over time,
Last
so
one,
please
last
keep
one.
it quick.
All right, just to be brief, we've just heard from Edward Snowden, and the revelations that he revealed is that we're being spied on, right? But what you're talking about is a relentless campaign of cyber warfare, essentially, some of it against U.S. citizens. How does it make you feel that the narrative currently in the media surrounding cyber warfare and this stuff is about we are being spied on, something that many of us have sort of known for a while, whereas what you're talking about is essentially domestic cyber warfare?
Yeah, we need to look at the state and local levels. We need to look at the private security contractors that work within the U.S., often on the state and local levels, sometimes on the national levels. It's not just the U.S. intelligence community's 16 agencies, it's also state police departments, stuff like that, that get ignored in favor of the global coverage.
One last thing. All of the emails I've read at Stratfor, I think, would be put together nicely as a very dark sitcom, like a True Detective or American Dad, except like really racist.
Go for it.
Bo Wilmon, let's make that happen.
Thank you, everyone.
Permission?
One more? You want to give him one more?
All right, you guys were talking about how. All right, I got it.
Hello. Good evening, Hope. Okay, we're just slightly delayed, but while we're getting things together up here, I have a couple of very brief announcements to make. If you like what this guy's doing and you're into other forms of electronic music, there's a chiptune concert going on downstairs at 10 p.m. down by the behind the escalator to the mezzanine. And if you were there last night, you know how insane and wonderful it was. If you weren't there, this is your last chance to make up for that. So check that out. As you all should know, but I'm going to announce it anyway, all the talks were pushed forward an hour, so you're watching now a talk that was scheduled on your programs and on the posters to start an hour ago. And also, as a result, the Time Travel for Dummies panel is pushed forward to 3 p.m. yesterday. It's going to have been wonderful. Okay, we're gonna do a little more setting up here and then get started.
Yeah, if this makes sound, we're ready to go. So, is the sound running? Am I making sound yet? I'm not sure. No, wait. Yeah, let me see if I'm up here. Oh, maybe not. I'm making sound. Oh. Should that be making sound? There we go. Okay. Now is it making sound out there? The purple cable? This guy? How about now?
Got it.
It is not very loud. Nothing coming out? Okay, all right, no problem. I don't want to make us listen to the laptop speaker. Maybe it's not going all the way in. Oh, I have a tiny headphone jack. Nothing? Is it going that way?
Can you put it through and test it?
That should be buzzing. Well, can you all hear that? I mean, this is like the teeniest laptop speakers. I'd hate to forego the sound system. Yeah.
Nicely done.
Oh, yeah, let's try that.
We thank you all for bearing with us.
Let's try to
After what we pulled off this afternoon, everything takes a little extra love.
Here it is,
Try that. Oop.
Oh, hey. Oh.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, so without further ado, I'm happy to introduce the Electric Waste Orchestra, Colton Jackson. Give it up.
All right. So we're going to get to that. So my name is Colton Jackson, and this project is Electric Waste Orchestra, and I'll be upfront about the fact that orchestra is a optimistic moniker at this point. This is a club I started at Makerspace Urbana back in Illinois just a few months ago. There's a few demos I have to show off so far, and if demos are 50-50, I mean, well, one of these will work. This one is going okay. The rest of them we might hear, we might not. So I want to tell you a little bit about Makerspace Urbana because without what we had going on there, none of this stuff I'm going to show you would have happened. So it's a humble makerspace, and I want to talk about makerspaces. Oh, this is exciting. Okay, I like seeing the audience. Actually, can I? Or is it better if? Okay, that's great. So it's Makerspace Urbana. If you haven't visited your local makerspace, I encourage you to. If your town doesn't have a makerspace, you could start one. Why not? In our makerspace, it's mostly just kind of big open tables, lots of power outlets. We did get a 3D printer recently, which I 3D printed my glasses on, and I would love to talk to you about that too. It's totally open source tool chain, and so the 3D printer brings a lot of people in, but you'd be surprised how many people you can get to come into your hackerspace just by having like the screwdrivers you need to repair your laptop, because most people don't have those screwdrivers. So we do a lot of repairing. We have a community help desk that people come in, we fix their computers, tell them what a virus is, and they leave a lot of extra computer parts behind because we upgrade the RAM, we upgrade their hard drives, and we say, yeah, we'll stock that in the back. And I kind of grew up in the IT world, and I think anyone else that did realizes how quickly e-waste stacks up, because it's not free to get rid of generally. Sometimes you can find someone who will let you toss it away, but it does cost money to disassemble this stuff and to get rid of it or incinerate it. So anywhere you go, any hackerspace, any IT department, they're going to have stacks of hard drives. The hard drives I'm using are like 4 gigabytes. They're not useful to anyone anymore, right? You can get like a thumb drive that's faster and more portable. So this is I'm basically saw all this stuff that we had and saw how wasteful it was being, and that it wasn't serving any purpose, and I wanted to find something to do with it. So that was kind of my inspiration for what I started doing. So makerspaces, this happened because I ripped open an old hard drive, and like while I was tearing it apart, basically I saw a post on Hackaday that you can spin a motor and it creates a sine wave. So I thought, well, I've done some music and I've done enough electronics to know that I can amplify and control things with sine waves, so I thought I'd try it. So as I was like taking apart this hard drive and soldering wires to the back of it, I had some friends who were like, oh, what are you doing? Because that's what makerspaces are about. You're like looking over each other's shoulders, seeing what projects each other are working on. And when you get a bunch of people just like hanging out, working on their own projects, you get this access to expertise that I think money can't buy. It's like you're sitting across the table from like an electronics engineer, and you're saying, oh, I don't know how a motor works. And he says, oh, I'll tell you. I'll get the whiteboard out and explain how a motor works. And so I was like soldering to the motor, and some guys were like, oh, what are you doing over there? I was like, well, I saw that you can get a sine wave off of this, but so I'm not sure exactly how I need to hook it up. And the guys were like, oh, well, hey, let's learn how to use the oscilloscope. I was like, yeah, let's learn how to use the oscilloscope. So I got like a free one-on-one lesson to use an oscilloscope and learned, kind of about just like ground and positive and, really basic electronic stuff that I didn't know yet, but I knew that it was easy enough. I mean, especially when you're surrounded by guys that know their thing. So we tried it. We basically had a lot of fun. Just tearing into an old hard drive can be a lot of fun, because usually computers are these black boxes that a lot of people are afraid to touch or afraid to take apart, because if they break it, they have to call their nephew and be like, oh, so these are like black boxes that are mysteries to a lot of people. Maybe not people here, but it's fun for people to like take things apart when they don't usually get to, and especially if there's like no penalty for breaking it. That's I make it very clear. That's what we're doing here. We're breaking these things so we can do something else with them. So we tear everything out. We rip the reading head out, and it's just a nice silver disc with a couple of contacts on the back that you can solder directly to. We got that going, and we hooked it up to the sine wave, and I wish we had video, but never figured out how to get micro HDMI going. So you can look up videos. I got some videos on YouTube, Electric Waste Orchestra. But yeah, we hooked this up to an oscilloscope, and you spin it, and it's got produces a sine wave. The faster you spin it, the higher frequency the sine wave. And I'll go ahead and start a demo with just this guy. I got a chip that works pretty well. And oh wait, I'll leave my bag down there. Do I got a suitcase sitting over by? Oh, forget it. I can do it. So basically, I did it in software first. Figured out how to control sound with this as an input device. And then figured out an analog amplifier later. And let's see what I can show you to start off. So I'm using this software. I don't know, raise your hand if you've ever heard of Max MSP. Yeah, quite a few. So any of the electronic musicians guys have probably seen what Max MSP can do. So I'm using Pure Data, which a lot of you guys might have also heard about. But it's an open source branch. I don't know if that's the right term, but the guy that did all the math in the back end for Max MSP went off and started his own project. It's all open source, and it works pretty well. And it interfaces with Arduinos. So when I unplug it, it starts making noise. So how many of you are familiar with Arduinos? Probably a lot of you guys. So super popular with hobbyists. So I'm here, I'm not selling a shield. I didn't make a new shield for the Arduino. I just figure Arduinos is something that a lot of people already have. So I thought this is kind of an opportunity to take stuff that people have lying around. If you got a hackerspace, you probably got a stack of Arduinos around too. Then we got free software. So I wanted to make this a really cheap tool chain so anyone that has these parts can start playing around with it. So with the hard drive motor, it's as simple as hooking up one to the analog input. So the Arduinos have the analog inputs, which if you've ever used a voltmeter or an oscilloscope, it's essentially, it's an analog to digital converter, and any amount of electricity between 0 and 5 volts gets converted to a digital number. You know, it's like, well, it's 10-bit precision, so it's, anyways, anywhere between 0 and 5 volts gets converted to a number between 0 and 1. And you can pass that on to the synthesis software. The Pure Data software has a Arduino library. You can pass that information on. So you can hook up one of the wires to analog in, and it has 6 of those channels. So that's, I'll get to the guitar. It's 6 channels, leads to 6 hard drives, which leads kind of to a guitar way to play it. So one's a ground and one's analog 0 gives you the ability, get this thing out of the way. Let's see if I have my code ready to go, multiplier. Reset. So live demos suck, right? Unplug it, plug it back in. Let me just, this thing was working, let me just get back to that.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I was just trying to start, this is the first thing that I figured out, is just, okay, one hard drive, analog input, I can make it spin. And so with Pure Data, it's, you get that number as just an input. It comes in serially, and you can send it to whatever function you want. So there's an oscillation function that takes frequency as an argument. So you can, and this comes in as a number between 0 and 1, like I said. So you can just multiply that input until it's in a range of frequencies that you want, and start spinning it up and getting really crazy noises. But I wrote some code. It's all up on GitHub. Like I said, this is trying to get other people into it, and so it's all open source using open source software. And so the code I wrote basically acts as kind of a capacitor resistor circuit, so it smooths the signal out. It comes in as a sine wave, but since this particular ADC only reads positive voltage, it gets just the top end of the sine wave, so it's like chop, 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 chop. And it's also sampling it a certain number of times per second, so it's grabbing different parts of the sine wave. So really, it's just kind of voltage spikes that I read off the hard drive, and it's like a couple hundred millivolts, a small amount of electricity. But I can bring that into my code and basically have code that the faster you spin it, the longer you spin it, the louder the volume goes up. But as soon as you stop the disk, the volume drops back to 0. So if I can at least connect on that again. File not found. It's not a file. Yes. Things are happening. I should have just kept it around. So I'm surprised you didn't say like Mr. Blue Sky, because it is a play off Electric Light Orchestra, and I wish I could play covers for you. So yeah, like I said, so it's 6 channels, and then the rest of them, it just goes to a common ground. So that's what noise sounds like. So yeah, the voltage readers kind of just float around the halfway mark, so it makes noise when nothing's plugged into it. Wow, that's exciting. Let's see what else I was going to say about this while it's playing with me. Right, so the flyer I put up around this to advertise for my club is just Makerspace Urbana. I wanted to have a club where I could get electric engineers and electronic musicians in the same room together. I thought they had a lot to teach each other, but they don't often run into each other. And like Urbana, it's a college town. We've got the University of Illinois, and the music department and the engineering department on opposite sides of campus. They just don't often run into each other. All right, yeah. So electronic musicians and electronic engineers don't usually run into each other, but I think they had a lot to teach each other, and I had been learning from them just hanging out at Makerspace, so I wanted to get them in the same room. So I whipped up a flyer, put a picture of the oscilloscope on it, and said, electronic engineers, electronic musicians, come in and we'll learn from each other. We'll futz with this stuff. We'll learn some code. We'll learn some electronics. And yeah, at first I thought I was just going to get just invited engineers and musicians, but I got some guidance from a friend that I'm not a musician or an engineer, so I should invite people that are like me, just people that are interested in learning about electronics and music. So that's when it kind of got this identity of being not just a clubhouse for engineers and musicians, but also an educational opportunity where people could come in and learn how to solder, just simple soldering wires to the back of the hard drive. They could learn a little bit about what these components are inside the computer. So like I said, not just hard drives, but also like the circuit boards they could just tear into and be like, oh, what's this, and just kind of have fun learning about what's inside these things. Or you can dig into old telephones and see all the circuits inside those. So it's fun just to tear into the stuff. But if you're hanging out with experts that really know what's going on here, and then you've got people that don't know anything yet, like me, then it's a really fun exchange. You get these experts excitedly talking about the things that they know, and people that are really interested in the fact that they showed up in this space where people were willing to teach them. Oh, geez. So this is also a learning experience for me. Usually I'm presenting this to 4 to 5 people at a time. So walking into this room, I think the number of people who knew about Electric Waste Orchestra tripled in here. So this is great. Oh. So the firmware on the Arduinos, it's actually one of the examples. It's called Fermata, and one of the examples is just Fermata analog simple. It just passes along all the analog electronic information, and it doesn't look like it's loaded on the Arduino now. That's weird. If I can find where I set my suitcase, there's something in the front pocket I want to show off. Is it by your photo stuff? Examples. So we can make this a little bit more casual instead of me just trying to make my demo work. All right, if any of you guys are hardware guys, we can kind of do a Q&A, but we'll get back to the demos and stuff. But I want to hear if you guys have ideas of how you could use circuit boards and hard drives, what other hardware have I not thought of? If you've got an idea of materials you have on hand that you can imagine a way to make an instrument. Thank you very much. I can't believe I left that back out there. All right. But okay, so I can show off this analog circuit anyway and get this going. I'll be a filter. All right. So this is an op amp. It's a LM like 324. This is a circuit a friend of mine designed, and I tell him he's too generous. So I'm going to plug this in. It's noisy, but that's be okay. So this just hooks up to the hard drive. So this is something I came up with after playing with the software. A friend of mine's like, well, you can just hook up an op amp to it and amplify the signal and see how it sounds. And this is actually a pretty good instrument now. So it's producing a sine wave. I love this place. I was hanging out in the hotel lobby and showing this off to a guy. And he's like, oh, it sounds more like a square wave. I think your op amp is clipping the signal. And I'm like, oh, yeah, thanks, stranger. So this place is awesome. But yeah, so it is producing kind of more of a square wave sound, but it is just the signal just amplified. There's no programming going on here. And it's actually, once you can kind of get a little bit of a feel for it, alligator. Oh, jeez. You can kind of get a feel for like how quickly you spin it and start playing kind of like. So this is something like I just started playing the other day, and it's like it's a totally new form of instrument. You have to kind of get a new feel. So just like your muscle memory on any other instrument, this is like the muscle of how fast you flick it is like how it gets to a certain pitch. So that's like it's a new style. I mean, it's something to work on, and you can actually start playing music with it potentially if you're dedicated to it. But with the code, it's really interesting to find out. Like you can program what sounds it makes. This is just like whatever signal comes out of it is what you got. But if you go the software route, you can say, okay, well at this voltage, if I'm producing 100 millivolts, if I'm producing 100 millivolts, then play a C. If I'm producing like 120 millivolts, play a D. You can do that stuff in software defined. And if I can, I'll try to get that coming back up here. Standard. And yeah, I did want to talk a little bit about like why using e-waste is kind of an interesting material, not just because it's a free material and we all have it stacked up, but it's like if you wanted to design a physical instrument to play digital music, and I like the idea of that because of course all these sounds you could just like write code to produce these sounds, but I think it's really valuable to have a physical interface. I'm going to move that for my crotch. I think it's really valuable to have a physical interface to the digital music because it's just something more tactile, something that you can actually get up on stage with and not just sit on a laptop. So I had the idea that I did want to design physical instruments. But if you had sat down in a Radio Shack or in a hackerspace and you have all these knobs and sliders and touchpads and you can design any instrument in the world, it's kind of like a really daunting blank canvas, right? I kind of think it's hard to imagine something that you haven't seen before. You're just bound to come up with something that's been designed before. Just like you're trying to think of what you could draw on a blank canvas. But when you kind of go rummaging through your garbage pile and you see a ScanMan controller board. It's got all these kind of nice big solder points on the back that you can touch. it creates like, it gives you something to work with. It also gives you boundaries to work within. You have to start thinking, okay, I have to make something out of this material. Now what can I make? And you end up with an instrument that you wouldn't have otherwise designed from scratch because you had to work within boundaries that have been given to you, or at least what you picked out because it was sitting in front of you. And some of this stuff, I also wanted to start making stuff with this because I thought it was really attractive. I mean, maybe some of you guys can empathize. It's like there's a good aesthetic to circuit boards, you know, this sort of like really kind of chaotic, but it's very organized. So I wanted to, you know, get this stuff out of the garbage bin. I mean, it's not, you know, it's separate from the garbage bin. It's just like sitting up and gathering dust. And I wanted to do something with it. Well, so I went over all that. So with musical instruments, it's kind of a fun thing that you can get people together on, and people that wouldn't otherwise have come in for a soldering lesson or to learn programming. It's like, oh, I'll try to build a musical instrument. I'll see what it looks like. Sorry? I think hard drive was the first thing because basically I had been futzing around with Arduino. I knew that it had the analog converter, and I had seen this software that could use the analog. So the hard drive was the first thing that I saw, okay, I can make a signal with this, and I can control something with that signal. These ISA boards are really fun because, so I looked up like a schematic and figured out, okay, it takes 5 volt. I can provide 5 volt with an Arduino. And as the power goes through all this, when you like touch the kind of cross circuits, you know, short circuits with your fingers, you know, your fingers conduct enough electricity to screw stuff up. So you can short circuits and change the voltage that's coming out of all these data pins. So you know, it communicates with the computer, you know, through these data pins by shifting the voltage up and down really rapidly. But actually, especially with this really old stuff, one of these pins just it's just like a floating point number. It's just sitting at this number, and I can make it go up and down if I had my hardware running. Done uploading. Oh. Okay, I'm going to unplug it. You're out? Oops. Almost there. So I'm coming to you guys basically with, like, you know, this is the stuff that we came up with in our club for a few months, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys afterwards and figuring out what kind of new stuff we can make. And I'm glad that I get this chance to show it off. Okay, so I'll go over like how this is coded to give you an idea of like what's possible with this software. So essentially, it's 6 oscillators that each have a frequency set to them, and the volume of that oscillation is set to 0 until you spin the hard drive associated with that oscillator. So I think in this version. Oh, that's noise. Okay, so it's okay. Noise is coming in somewhere. Okay, so it should be quiet right now, but wired funny. There's extra noise happening. So it's okay. So I'll shut it up for a second. It's turning the volume up on each of those notes as I spin it. And I have the numpad. It's just a USB numpad. There's nothing hacked about it. But there's a function in Pure Data where you can make things change as a response to keystrokes. So when I hit the number 1, it sets notes to all, and it can use MIDI numbers. So you can set in MIDI values like 70, 74, 76, and set what note each hard drive is going to control. And then as I go up the numbers on the numpad, it can kind of go up the scales in whatever scale you want it to. I think I tried to do a C major scale. I think one of them, the notes is wrong, but yeah. So you can program it any way you want, and when you're, I don't know, it's really neat to sit down with people who don't know music and show them that this is a way that they can start playing music. You don't need to get like muscle memory around your piano. You can just like program the code to respond to whatever interface you have going. So it's, yeah, I think you guys get the idea, but. So to not do myself to further failed demos, I'll say that's kind of to wrap it up, but we got this room for like another 20 minutes. So if you guys want to come up, this stuff works better in a non-stage setting. So come up and see some of this equipment I got, and we'll kill the rest of the time. So thank you. You're welcome to try out the guitar. So come on up and get your picture taken.
Hello. Here I am. Okay, good evening, Hope. From this strange position, it is my pleasure to introduce the next presentation. But before I do that, just a couple of announcements. First of all, you all look really weird from this angle. Second of all, just a reminder that the concert is going on tonight at 10 p.m. by the escalator that leads up to the mezzanine on the first floor. If you were there last night, you know how insane and wonderful it was. If you weren't there last night, this is your chance to make up for that dreadful, dreadful state of affairs. So tonight at 10 p.m., check that out. A couple other things going on. As you know, the talks are all pushed forward an hour, but I'll mention it anyway. All the talks are pushed forward an hour. And due to stuff running over earlier today. Also, as a result, also the how to install Linux on your time machine talk has been postponed to 3 p.m. yesterday, but it's going to have been wonderful. If you got your TV Begon when you registered and there was a stack of batteries for you to take a battery, yeah, the trip glasses rather, not TV Begons, thank you. If you got your trip glasses and you saw the little packages of batteries,